You know, everybody is obsessed these days with the Jeffrey Epstein case, but it has all turned into theater, political theater. And I think that we should have a far more adult conversation and realization about not just what happened, but what is happening. We know that what happened is something very, very terrible, and it has to do with sex trafficking of young girls. We know that it happened. We know that Jeffrey Epstein was the main guy, and we know that Ghislaine Maxwell was his accomplice. She has been convicted. She has been sentenced to 20 years in prison. Now, I thought when the president said, well, I wish her well, to me that was code for be a good girl, Ghislaine, and only say what I would want you to say, and then I'll consider a pardon. He said the other day he hasn't even thought about it, but that to me is completely not believable. A couple of days ago, Todd Blank, who had been his personal lawyer in his own criminal trials and is now at the DOJ, was down in Florida, in Tallahassee, interviewing Ghislaine Maxwell. And she supposedly gave him 100 names. It's so interesting. I don't know what everybody thinks they're going to find in those Epstein files, because Pam Bondi is going to, I love when the president said something like, well, I want her to release any credible names. Well, credible names for them would, of course, be any prominent Democrats. They certainly wouldn't want anyone that would be inconvenient to them. We know how dark and horrible all this is. How many possibly think that Jeffrey Epstein really committed suicide in prison? Let's not forget that Virginia Giuffre died once again by suicide in Australia recently, where she lived, and she was the one, of course, who accused both Prince Andrew and quite a few others in that case. When people talk about wanting to get down to the truth, I think we see a very interesting case here of ignoring the voices of women. You want to hear what happened? These women are talking. Some of the women had stopped talking because they said they received death threats, but we have enough of them who have talked and are talking to anybody who will listen. So what do you think you're going to get from the Epstein files as released by the FBI after the FBI has gone through them with their own clear biases? And even if you hear from Ghislaine Maxwell, I think it's reasonable to think she's going to say whatever she would think would most probably lead to some kind of a commutation or a pardon. What we really need to deal with is the fact that we have a society where, number one, this kind of thing could occur, where, number two, so many men who have been entrusted positions of prominence, whether they're Democrat or Republican, doesn't even matter, that would be willing to participate in something so heinous. And number three, what are we doing right now? Not listening to the women. What are we doing believing anything that the system is going to have to say? You know, we've really become a lot like the Soviet Union now. Anytime officialdom says anything, the majority of Americans is going, yeah, right. That's a tragedy here. And meanwhile, we're talking about that and not talking about some extremely important other stories having to do with things going on right now that are such horrifying examples of human cruelty, both in this country and around the world. If this is the one thing that turns MAGA against Trump, good. But in the meantime, it's just show. It's just political theater. You want to know what happened? Listen to those women. They'll tell you what happened. That's what we have to deal with. What happened and, of course, why.